Basically, there is a list of distilleries I need to study that could potentially be on the exam. The course book for the exam is David Broom's World Atlas of Whiskey. However, in my notes and in my videos, I'm going much more in depth than what is in those books. So if you're following along and perhaps taking notes and maybe joining on these live streams, taking this quiz, you're going to learn a lot more than you would if you were just reading that book and preparing for the exam from that book. So in this week, did a review of the Auchentoshan 21-year-old. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit more about Auchentoshan. Going to have a little quiz, 7 questions. All the material in those questions was on the video from earlier this week. But I'm going to also go head-to-head with another 21-year-old, an Irish whiskey 21-year-old. So head-to-head, 21-year-old versus 21-year-old. There's some differences in terms of the cask a little bit. Very close in ABV. Ironically, the Auchentoshan triple distilled, Bushmills Irish double distilled. But there's enough similarities and close in price that I think it's worth going head-to-head between these two. But before we get into it, let me say hello to everyone joining in. David Belcher, thanks for tuning in. Judith Stoll, thanks for tuning in. And Mike Bennett, it's been a while since I've seen you. And Matthew Renke, thanks for tuning in. Excuse me, your background makes it look like you didn't even move. Yeah, I kind of knew that was going to happen. So for those who don't know, I've moved several times over the years. Some of my earlier videos, I'm actually in Sunnyvale in a 1-bedroom apartment, and it somewhat looks like this. And then I moved up to Roseville near Sacramento, and it kind of looked like this. And then I moved to and then I was in Sonoma Wine Country in Santa Rosa, and the setting looks like this. So probably the biggest difference between where it previously was and here is it's a constant, 55 to 65 degrees, cool and foggy, and I'm not dealing with the allergies that I had up in Santa Rosa. It's a lovely, lovely place. Lived on the golf course. Lovely mountains. I just love the view there. A lot of wildlife every day. It was spectacular. Looking out my door, and there's some deer, and there's raccoons, and there's squirrels, and there's a lot of geese, and some golfers running around. Here, I'm just got fog, a whole lot of fog, and occasionally at night you can hear a foghorn, but it's not like the old it's not like it's like more of an electronic sound, and I've gotten used to it already. When I was living in Roseville, I lived near a train track, but I got used to that as well, listening to trains, and it was never much of a problem in dealing with recording. All right, let me pour myself a little bit of the Auchentoshan 21-year-old. I'm going to pour myself a little bit of the Bushmills 21-year-old. So you may have heard me say this before. If you're going to study a particular region, let's say a wine region, or whiskey region, or particular producers, I think you should know the core range, because that's most of what people are going to be drinking, and be familiar with the core range. But you also ought to see what is the very, very best that region or that producer can do, because then you get a better judgment of not just what the average person is drinking, but what's the very, very best they can do. So you know their full potential. So in every wine region, I always want to look at who is the best in this particular region. Even if it's, say it's the Central Valley, which the bulk of California wine comes from, or say somewhere in Spain, or like Rioja or Ribera del Duero, Vega Sicilia. It's probably the best producer. Bottles, $600 to $800 a bottle. Obviously, you go talk Bordeaux, you're talking the first growth, Chateau Latour, Mouton Rothschild, Lafite Rothschild, Chateau Margaux, and all that. Same thing goes for distilleries and producers is, okay, Auchentoshan, as I said in the video that I played earlier this week, is known as the bartender's malt. And they've geared themselves towards that market. And so while, say, the Virgin Oak or the triple wood are very fine whiskeys, nice whiskeys, 30, 35 bucks, you know, an enjoyable dram, light, citrus, a little maltiness, some vanilla, some spice. They're really geared towards making cocktails. And when I visited Auchentoshan Distillery, and I talked about this in the video, you get a little sample of, I wonder if I still have the cup. No, I'll probably put it on. Oh, wait. You get a little sample of an Auchentoshan ale. And I had the video, this clip inside my review of this whiskey. Basically, it's Auchentoshan triple wood or virgin oak, whatever, $33, whatever. Lemon juice. And I use honey as a simple syrup rather than powdered sugar. In the Auchentoshan's video, they used powdered sugar. I prefer to use a little bit of honey. And it's a nice, refreshing whiskey. Really, really liked it. So, hey, Mark, thanks for tuning in. And Tom Marr says, oh my God, Bushmills 21, one of my favorites. Okay, cool. So we're going to see how these do. But so I'll be smelling them, tasting them, but not giving a whole lot of notes as we go through our quiz. And then after the quiz, then I'll go head to head, give them a comparison between the two. Now, I'm not going to pretend to try to do this blind. I mean, even if I had someone else come along and move the glasses around and whatever, you know, it's a 50-50 chance just in guessing as to what it is. But secondly, I think the Bushmills is a little darker. If you can see that, it's a little darker. Of course, they could probably put U150 into it. The Auchentoshan is more orange and gold in color. So even if someone else came along, unless I could put them in black Glencairns, and I have those. I could do that. But anyway, I'm not going to bother. Given that I know what it is, the price range and so forth, I'm curious to see, you know, which one's better between these 21-year-olds. All righty. Let's get into the quiz. Now, remembered, limited release. Anyone know the differences? We'll get into the notes. So I like Auchentoshan, but I respect that they know who they are. They know what they're geared for, and they're not pretending to be something that they're not. They're not pretending to be something that they're not. And I think that's probably what irks whiskey tubers particularly more, is when someone's using a lot of marketing shtick to pretend to be something. It's like putting lipstick and makeup on a pig. You're right? An eyeshadow on a pig to make it look like a beautiful woman. And yet it's a pig. And so charging high prices for whiskeys where you're just putting a lot of lipstick on it, whether it's fancy boxes and wrapping and wrappers, you know, and labels, changing your bottle shape, or a lot of marketing, advertising shtick, when the actuality, what is on the inside, isn't all that, and you're charging $200 for it. That's what probably ticks people off the most. And so a whiskey that is what it is, it's not pretending to be something else, even if it's not what I might particularly care for, or might not be my go-to, or might not be my favorite, or doesn't get a lot of buzz in the whiskey tuber world or in the Oswas and all that, I can respect it for what it is. All righty, let's get into the quiz. All right, question number one. Again, my quizzes are meant to reinforce what we've already covered, what we've already studied in the video, and not to trip anybody up. Some of these may, for us, because we're whiskey aficionados, will seem too simple. But someone who's new to whiskey, this will seem difficult, or they're hearing this for the first time. All right, first question. Auchentoshan Distillery is located, I know, you're like, really, man, you really gonna put that question down there? Yes, I did. We're starting super simple. Auchentoshan Distillery is located in A, the Lowlands, B, the Highlands, C, Isla, or D, Speyside. Now, if you were to go up to the average consumer, even average consumer of whiskey, and ask them if they've ever even heard of Auchentoshan, they're probably going to say no, never heard of it, let alone tasted it, let alone know where it's from. So I'm trying to reach all levels here. All right. And everybody can say A, because it is from the lowlands. So the first two distilleries I visited on my first trip to Scotland in 2018. It's funny because I can't remember which one I went to first. It was Glengoyne and Auchentoshan. But I also visited Clydeside. Clydeside, they're in production, but they didn't have anything released yet. Clydeside is downtown Glasgow, right down on the water. I think now they have releases, but at the time, they're still too new. Glengoyne is like right on the border of the lowlands and the highlands, with their warehouses being in the lowlands, the still houses being in the highlands, right there along the highway. So that's why it's so close. So staying in Glasgow, if your first trip to Scotland, if you stay in Glasgow, your two distilleries you're probably going to want to hit is going to be Auchentoshan and Glengoyne. Now, I know somehow someone watching this on the replay is going to correct me on my pronunciation. It's not Auchentoshan, it's Auchentoshan or Auchent whatever. I'm close enough. That's an American way of pronouncing Auchent. It could be Auchentoshan, but it's a shan. It could be Auchentoshan, Auchentoshan, whatever. That's what it is. All right. Next question. The name Auchentoshan means A, triple distilled, B, land of sheep, C, at the foot of the mountain, or D, corner of the field. So what does Auchentoshan mean? Aldo, thanks for tuning in. Matthew says D. Aldo Diverti says C. Michael Gonzalez, hey, how you doing, Michael? Says D. Judith says B, land of sheep. Michael Jackson used to say, pronounce it like an imprecation. Okay. Mike says B, question mark. Tom C says C. So we do have some variances on this one. And I think C is probably throwing people off for a particular reason, which will be in another question. All right. The answer is D, corner of the field. Corner of the field. All right. Not foot of the mountain. So if you're familiar with the Napa Valley, if you ever come to the Napa Valley, and there's 16 sub-AVAs within the Napa AVA, American Viticulture Area, the southern area, I know I'm getting into wine because that's what I do. I'm going to take a little sniff. The first AVA you come to is Los Caneros, or just called Caneros, and that means sheep or ram. So land of the sheep, and there's a lot of sheep and a lot of cows, the Highland cows in Scotland, but it means corner of the field. Now, why did they name it that? I don't know. Yeah, I know what an imprecation is. Imprecatory. So the imprecatory psalms. Most people don't know what imprecation is. So you have, I'll get on the religion. You have different types of psalms in the Old Testament or in the Hebrew Bible, in the Bible. And some are called imprecatory psalms. And those are not necessarily a curse, but they're imprecatory psalms dealing with the enemy. So that's what an imprecatory, and so I knew what an imprecatory or an imprecation is. I was just surprised anybody else would use that term. Yes, but that's what an imprecatory is. Some of the most controversial verses in the Bible are the imprecatory psalms. But we won't get into that because we're not a religion show. All right. 3, Auchentoshan Distillery is located A, on the Kintyre Peninsula, B, around the upstream River Clyde, C, at the base of Kilpatrick Kilpatrick Hills, or D, near Port Ardrossan? So to get more specific, other than the lowlands, where is Auchentoshan Distillery located? On the Kintyre Peninsula, or on the upstream River Clyde, at the base of the Kilpatrick Hills, or near Port Ardrossan? And everybody's saying C, C, C. David Belcher says B. So this isn't a test to see what you know. It's a test to see whether or not you're paying attention or ever even watched my videos. All right, and the answer is at the base of the Kilpatrick Hills, which is why some people might have thought the previous answer was foot of the mountain, because they remembered, yeah, something about being near some hills, bottom of some hills or something. So yeah, maybe it means foot of the mountain. No, it's the base of the Kilpatrick Hills. Yeah, and then these are nowhere near each other in terms of aromas and flavors. And it's not necessarily even ones, I'm just on the nose right now. They're just very different. There's no way they could be mistaken for each other. So I'm going to show you my notes on these two whiskeys real quick. I mean, I'll show you that. So Auchentoshan, 21-year-old, triple distilled, 21-year-old, aged in bourbon and sherry cask, bottled at 43% alcohol by volume. Excuse me. Sells for about $220. Of course, there's a lot of variance in prices. The Bushmills is double distilled. It's also 21-year-old, aged in bourbon and sherry cask, but it also spent 2 years in a Madeira cask. And I can tell the difference. Just on the nose, that's making probably the biggest difference between the two. It's only at 40 ABV, so these are lower ABV. Price range is similar. So I saw one at $219 all the way up to $259. So these are on the expensive side, but potentially you could get them for the same price. So double versus triple, both 21-year-old. One has additional Madeira cask, very close in ABV. And very close, if not the same, in price. All right. And I'll show that slide again later on when I start giving notes on both of these. So Tom R says Madeira, is it arrow than all the other casks? Is it less than or more than? I don't remember if I think that means less than the other casks. See, it's only 2 years. Yeah, it's only 2 years. So yeah, it's definitely going to be less. But it's not just a matter of how much time. It's what does that particular type of greater than. So Madeira is greater than the other cask. So it's not just the amount of time. It's how much impact does that type of cask have? Pedro Jimenez, PX cask, in 6 months, it could add more flavor intensity than a bourbon or Oloroso sherry cask in 6 months than those casks might do in 10 years, right? Because of the nature of the wine. So it's not just a matter of time. It's a matter of the intensity of what those type of casks. Okay. Mike Bennett says I think Mike Bennett is the Tom R interpreter. Thank you very much. Oh, okay. Tom R says better than. All right. So Madeira is better than all the other casks. I like Madeira. I like Madeira wine, and I like Madeira cask. All right, let's get into the next question. Before I lose track, what was the last one we were just on? Question number 4. Auchentoshan Distillery was founded in what? The same year as the Excise Act, which made licensed distilling legal. So I added that extra. I could have just said Auchentoshan Distillery was founded in whatever year, but I find it helpful, particularly of the distilleries that started in the 1800s, is sort of use the Excise Act as sort of like BC and AD, on our calendar, to use that as sort of a marker by which, in terms of understanding the dates of the distilleries. So let's see. David Butcher says B. Matthew Renke says B. Judith says B. Mike Bennett says B. Michael Gonzalez says B, question mark. John Marr says, I enjoy Madeira from the 1800s. The oldest Madeira I've had was a 1908 Boal. So there's, you have, let me get the answer, then we'll get into this. So the answer is 1823. That is correct. So you have Cercial, Verdejo, Boal, and Malmsey. Those are your four styles of, and those go sweeter as you go along. So Malmsey is the most, the sweetest. So I've had a 1908 Boal, and you may have heard me say this before, but if you open a bottle of Madeira, you can put the cork back in, come back 10 years later, and it's still going to be good. In fact, I have a bottle. Where did I put it? Oh, they're over there on the counter. I rearranged things. So this may somewhat look the same, but there has been a little bit of rearrangement. I've now made the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, or over here. I made them more of a star player. I used to have Ardbeg right behind me. They're over there. Now I made Scotch Malt Whisky Society. I'm going to be doing a video on the Scotch Malt Whisky Society in the near future. That'll be coming up. All right. Yeah, that Madeira definitely makes its presence known. I'll tell you specifically what I think it is and how it's coming across after we finish the quiz. All right, next. Question number 5. Auchentoshan Distillery is known for its A, use of lowland peated barley, B, exclusive use of French oak casks, C, very tall stills, or D, triple distillation. Everybody should do well on this. By the way, what is the name of that distillery? I don't know. There's a new distillery. It's a resurrected distillery. Roy and I went and visited it my last trip. It begins with an A, and I have the hardest time remembering. They're making lowland peated whiskeys, and for the life of me at the moment. Anyway, so there is lowland peat, and we're going to be seeing lowland peated whiskeys in the near future. Everybody's saying D, of course. Everybody knows it's triple distillation, and there's a little picture of the stills. Next question. Which has never owned Auchentoshan Distillery? This might be the most difficult question in all this. I don't know. So we're going through the history now. These are all in chronological order, but one of these doesn't belong. So which has never owned Auchentoshan Distillery? Thorne, an engineer from Greenock. B, C.H. Curtis and Company. C, John and George McLaughlin Beer and Wine Merchants. By the way, in the video, I mispronounced McLaughlin. I think I said McLaughlin or something like that. Probably confusing my head with McAllen. Anyway, it's a McLaughlin. John and George McLaughlin Beer and Wine Merchants. D, Diageo. E and J Tennant of Walpark Brewery. Or F, Eddie Cairns. And everybody's saying D. Everybody's saying D. Really, the purpose of this question was just to review who some of the previous owners are. I think one of the most challenging things studying distilleries is some of the complex history when so many of them change ownership. Probably one of the most confusing histories is Glendronach. One of the most confusing histories because they change hands so many times. I'm going to drink a little bit of water here. I'm going to take a sip between the two. Taking out a little sip. So what I recommend Auchentoshan Distillery, it all depends on what you're going to do with the whiskey. Do you want a simple sipper, summertime sipper? I think a lighter spirit that is citrus forward can come across as being like refreshing, particularly if you put it on ice. I know some people, no, not on ice, oh no. Or if you make a cocktail with it. So for me, you've heard me say this a gazillion times. I'm not really into heavy peated whiskeys in summertime. I'm not into big, heavy, tannic wines in the summertime. Wines I've been having, even though it's cool here, this is actually, it's, watch this. Hey, Siri, what's the temperature in Half Moon Bay?
It's 61 degrees right now in Half Moon Bay.
So in some places in California, that's what you get in the wintertime. And it's been like this 55 to 65 constant. So actually, one of the things I like about living here is I'm more in the mood to drink a peated whiskey here during summertime than I normally would be. And it's a constant fog. I just went out for a walk, and it's just fog. But if you're in a place that's really hot, you're out in Texas or someplace in the Midwest, or even Central California, up in Sacramento or something like that, where it's really hot, that's a good time for an Auchentoshan, a lighter whiskey. You can put it on ice. It's, the times in which you'd be having lemonade, iced tea, a rosé wine, kicking back on the porch. I think that's sort of the gameplay if you're just going to have the whiskey on itself. Or, even if you don't put it on ice, it just comes across as a lighter, refreshing whiskey, which I think it suits itself in hotter weather. Interesting. Well, I want to comment on these right now, but I'm holding my comments till after the quiz. I'm tempted. All right, next question. I think we're in question 7. Yeah. Auchentoshan Distillery is currently owned by Morrison Bowmore. There's 3 different ways I hear people pronounce that. Auchentoshan Distillery is currently owned by Morrison Bowmore Distillers, which is owned by A, Pernod Ricard, Moet Hennessy Louis Vuitton, or LVMH. Why they're not MHLV, I don't know. But that's Moet Hennessy Louis Vuitton, but the acronym is LVMH. I don't know why. Michael Gonzalez says it's in the 80s and muggy in New York. C, Suntory, or D, Diageo. We get high humidity here, but because of this low temperature, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. So I don't mind it. And the answer is Suntory. All righty. So I'm guessing we had 7 quiz questions. I'm guessing everybody got either a 6. Excuse me. I just let out a big belch, but I silenced it. Yep, Suntory. Hey, Grumpy Old Fart, thanks for tuning in, man. Thanks for tuning in. All right, so I'm going to bring up the slide again, show you the 2 different whiskeys going head to head in case you're tuning in late. Talking about Auchentoshan Distillery. But now I'm going to do a head to head between an Irish and a Scottish 21-year-old. All right, so Auchentoshan 21-year-old triple distilled bourbon and sherry cask, 43% ABV. Bushmills 21-year-old bourbon and sherry cask, plus within that 2 years of Madeira. So I think it's 19 years in the bourbon and sherry, and then the last 2 years in the Madeira. Only 40% ABV, $219 to $259. So potentially you could get them at about the same price. Does it say triple distilled? I don't have my glasses on. Yes, you're right. You know what? Bing. You're right. They're both triple distilled. My bad. I made a mistake. You're right. You know what? They put it in real. I don't know if you can see that. But, so they have a regular block bold print with all the rest of the print, but they put the triple distilled right above the 21 in like this fancy lettering, and so I missed it. They're both triple distilled, what makes it a better comparison. So thank you very much. Thanks for the correction, 21-year-old. So there's actually a 2 triple distilled. You know, I should have looked a little deeper, should have looked online rather than just looking at the bottles. Should have guessed it probably would have been triple distilled. All right. So Mike Bennett, you get an extra point. So if you got all 7, then you got 8 out of 7. You get an extra point for pointing that out. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right. So how are they on the nose? So as expected, in a review, I think Auchentoshan typically has the more citrus forward on the notes, oranges and lemons, which is why it works well with a cocktail, a pale ale. Pale ales can be sort of citrusy, and then you use lemon in the cocktail, so it all fits really, really, really well. But with this additional age, it brings on some earthier notes, particularly when you first open it. It seems overly earthy. Some earthier notes, almost like a leather, a slight like mild chocolate character to it. Some vanilla, typical baking spices. I guess it's more like a milk chocolate, like a light milk chocolate. There's like a leather note to it. The Bushmills, that combination of the Madeira and the sherry cask, along with the bourbon. I think the sherry and the Madeira sort of overshadow the bourbon cask. There's like a combination between some sort of dessert that has figs in it, but also has dried red fruits and dried green fruits. So, you know, Christmas cake kind of character to it, and some dried pineapple. That dried pineapple character, getting a little bit more on the tropical side, is what I expect from Madeira. So I think the bourbon cask is probably playing more of a base to the other 2 casks, as well as something that helps integrate the 2 casks. But the bourbon cask itself is not really showing itself, but I know it's there because it's on the label or on the description of it. But I think the bourbon cask, and this is one of the great things about bourbon cask, while a first fill bourbon cask can be absolutely fantastic on its own, and I like them. I particularly like the Glenmorangie 18-year-old. I think one of the great things about bourbon is it's like a palette for painting on that you can build on it with other casks. It just works really, really, really well. So there's a lot more going on just on the nose with the Bushmills. The Auchentoshan is probably a little earthier. You're getting that leather note that I described. You're not getting anything like that from Bushmills. From Bushmills, it's all dried fruit. Dried black fruit, dried red fruit. A little bit of citrus. A little bit of chocolate, but not like as much as the Auchentoshan. And the spices there. Both of them have a real nice spice profile. This is a little bit more raisiny. So now those aromas and flavors as to which one you like, that is really personal preference. And what you're in, and not just personal preference, but what am I in the mood for? There's going to be a time in which I'm in the mood for this and not for that. And so when I'm not doing recording videos and I come in here, I really ask myself, what am I in the mood for? And do I feel like putting on ice? Do I feel like having it neat? Am I going to be reading a book? Is it a real cold day? I'm grabbing a blanket or putting on a hoodie sweatshirt, and I'm sitting next to the fireplace and reading a book and turning on the candles. I have a remote control. I can turn all the candles on in the room, electric candles. I wouldn't have real candles because it would burn the house down. What kind of a mood am I in? It's almost as if the Bushmills is more of a Thanksgiving and Christmas whiskey, and a little bit more towards Auchentoshan is maybe a little bit towards summer and early autumn. And again, that's my own psychological makeup as to how I'm interpreting these aromas and flavors. Mike Bennett says, in my side-by-side, I'm enjoying the 21 much more than the 12. Big surprise. I have fond memories of the 12 from a decade or two ago, but it has declined. Oh, Grumpy Old Fart says, I'm going to see, I'll switch over to quotes, the comments here. So last time I was in Ireland and Scotland, I did the same comparison. Interesting. Cool. I don't have a whole lot of 21-year-olds. So this was a unique opportunity to do, I think, a very sort of natural side-by-side comparison of two triple distilled whiskeys, 21-year-old, side-by-side with similar casking. I could say now, just on the nose, I would say on most days, particularly the holidays, I'm probably going to lean more towards the Bushmills 21. It just has the profile that I like, particularly around the holidays. You got the house decorated, whether it's Thanksgiving or Christmas. You got the Christmas tree and all the ornaments and, and all that kind of stuff and the festivities going on and the Christmas music and all that. This fits in that. And you think of what kind of foods you eat that time of the year, it just kind of goes in with that. But they're both very, very nice. All right, on the palate. First, I want to say I'm enjoying the Auchentoshan 21-year-old more now than when I reviewed it. I said it in the video, when I first had the neck pour, it seemed like a dirty orange. I think the leather and the earthy components were sort of compact, and they needed to open up and become more integrated into the citrus profile. And once they did, they displayed themselves a lot better. And that's what aeration does for whiskeys and wines. It's not just to become more expressive. Everything that is there becomes much more integrated, particularly, and I know I talk about, I say this a lot, particularly with peated whiskeys. The 21-year-old. I'm going to drink some water real quick. Christopher Malloy, thanks for tuning in, man. So Christopher Malloy says, I recently ignored everything I know about whiskey and bought Auchentoshan 3-wood. I needed to know what a whiskey that fakely colored tasted like. Well, now you know, apparently. Now you know. Now you know. Put it in with some IPA, some lemon juice, a little bit of simple syrup. Make a cocktail out of it. I think you'll enjoy it. Because that's really what it's designed for. How much so Mike, how much did so Christopher Miller, how much did you pay for it? The last time I bought the 3-wood, I paid $33 for it. How much did you pay for it? On the palate? So this is funny. Yeah. The Auchentoshan is 43. The Bushmills is 40 ABV. And yet at 40 ABV, we're not talking a major difference. The Bushmills has a better mouthfeel. Even though it's slightly higher in ABV, slightly lower ABV than the Auchentoshan, it has a glossy, silkier mouthfeel. Slightly, and we're talking slight. I'm talking minute differences. It has a little bit more of a coating feel to it, more of a round mouthfeel to it. The Auchentoshan feels thinner. That is probably the biggest difference between the mouthfeels. On the palate, it's delicate. It's delivers on the palate what it has on the nose. There's dried black fruit notes. a little bit of that sort of red dried fruit notes, a little bit of caramel, a little bit of vanilla, or whatever else. But neither of these are big kapow whiskeys in terms of intensity of flavor. And we whiskey tubers and whiskey enthusiasts, I could be drinking these, Scotch Malt Whiskey Society's neat. Last night, it'll be coming up. I'll be reviewing the Bunnahabhain 12 cask strength. If you can get, I'm just telling you right now, if you can get the Bunnahabhain 12 cask strength, buy it. I'm just telling you right now. Phenomenal whiskey, but it's a real high ABV, and it just kapow. But I just a fantastic whiskey, neat, and then even on ice. That's just a superb whiskey. I know it's hard to get, but it's a superb whiskey. I'm just telling you. So last night, having a Bunnahabhain 12 cask strength, and now today drinking 40 and 43 ABVs. Your perception and the way in which you've sort of a way of set my palate, it makes these whiskeys even more anemic, or somewhat anemic. But if you're a beer drinker or a wine drinker, you're drinking beers maybe 8% ABV, 11% ABV. You're drinking wines 13.5, 14.5 ABV. These whiskeys are going to seem big and intense and powerful. They're going to seem really, 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 really strong. I have a friend who's also sommelier, wine sommelier, and at my last place, we recorded a video for his channel, in which I basically taught him about whiskeys. His name is Vince, and he was just every whiskeys. I mean, we started off with the what did we start off with? Oh, the Cragganmore 12, right? And most people complain about Cragganmore 12, whatever. He was blown away by how big, how intense, how hot it is. Well, because he's a wine drinker. He works for a winery. He's just not accustomed to it. So it's all relative as to what your experience is. Don Mar says, I'm sad you don't have your beard anymore. I don't miss it. It maybe look better on camera. It's not comfortable. I didn't like fussing with it. It was really bad with the masks, so I don't miss it at all. I don't. If I was married again and she preferred the beard, I would grow the beard back for my wife. But I'm not growing my beard back for my viewers. Sorry, I don't love you that much. It was a hassle. I'm kind of a no frills, no hassle guy. I don't wear jewelry. I don't like wear watches. I never wear rings. Don't wear necklaces. Daniel Whittington, he's got the ring. He's got rings on and stuff, and he's got pierced ears, and he has that big ass medallion thing and all. I can't stand that thing. I have it. It's in a box sitting over here. But I can't. I don't like things clinging on me. I don't like things hanging on me. And all that. I don't like wearing glasses. I tried contacts, but it turns out I lack an enzyme in my eyes for dissolving proteins that can get in your eyes, and it's due to my Northern European heritage. That's what the eye doctor told me, and consequently, I was always having problems with the contacts, so I can't wear contacts. Maybe I'll get LASIK one of these days. Anyway, yeah. Oops, I missed it. Erik hates bling. Yeah, I am not a blingy guy. I'm kind of a no. I don't like wearing suits and ties. I don't like restrictive clothing. I think it's because it feels restrictive. I just don't like. I have rings. I thought it'd be cool to wear rings, but I just don't like wearing them. All right. Right now I'm going to pay attention to the finish. I paid attention to the nose, paid attention to the palate. Now I want to pay attention to the finish. Development, okay. Both of them are pretty much the same front, middle, and the finish. There's not a lot of evolution going on there. And if you watch my videos, you know I'm big on I like a ride. I like a whiskey that delivers something different along the way. They're both pretty much the same up front. So, although maybe the Auchentoshan has a hand up on that one. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna correct myself. The Auchentoshan 21, because it does have a little bit more of a sandalwood and spicy finish more than the Bushmills. The Bushmills has more of the dried black fruit notes. Do I have any Glenfarclas family casks? Right now, the only Glenfarclas I have is the 105 and the 13-year-old distiller exclusive. This is the 2004 13-year-old distiller exclusive. I picked this up at the distillery, and I have the 105. The 105, which I paid $85 for, cask strength, I think is one of the most underrated and sort of ignored Glenfarclas cask strength whiskeys. It's a much better whiskey than a lot of others, and it doesn't get quite the love and attention that it should. So the length of finish is pretty much the same. Medium to medium plus length of finish. Which do I like better? I think the Auchentoshan has a better development in terms of more variation. The Bushmills has more quantitatively more flavors. So the Auchentoshan has more change in development. The Bushmills has more distinctive flavors to it. That's the Madeira cask, giving it a little oomph in terms of more complexity. They both have about the same length of finish. I gave the Auchentoshan like 88 points. I would probably go 89 to 90, and I have to compare what I originally rated it at. 89 to 90 for the Bushmills. What would it take it to go over 90? More depth, better mouthfeel, more ABV. At 40%, it just doesn't deliver. It just doesn't. It just isn't. That's not me being a numbers snob. It's just a matter of you can tell the difference in the impact on the palate. It needs more oomph. Both of these should be brought up to at least 46% ABV. It would make a world of difference. For the price range on these two, let's say you can get them both for $220. Sorry, me personally, if I buy whiskeys because I need to review them. I bought the Auchentoshan, 21 because I was already familiar with their core range, with the more common bottles for the purpose of this channel. I wanted to know what is their full potential. And so that's the reason why I bought it. And I was talking about that at the beginning of this live stream. That's the reason why I bought it. Because if this is the best, potentially gearing towards the best of what they can do, then I want to try it. Over $200? No, neither one of these. Do you know what you can buy for far less than maybe 100 to 120 bucks, or even up to 200 bucks? Cask strength, non-chill filtered, no added coloring. You know what you can get for that? Hold on. These puppies, a lot of these puppies, the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. Now they're limited release. They come and they go. It's one cask at a time. And by the way, they actually release Auchentoshan. Auchentoshan is one of the distilleries that they do. But if you're a buyer of whiskey and drinker of whiskey and you're not doing YouTube channels, if I wasn't going to do YouTube channels, videos, and I wasn't trying to study whiskey and become familiar with all the distilleries and so forth, you could be perfectly happy just being a member of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. I know it sounds like a plug, like I'm advertising. I'm not. Just buy Scotch Malt Whisky Society and don't drink anything else, because you have the purity, you have the authenticity of the product. Yes, they're expensive. But for what you get in comparison to what else is out there in the market, I think you come out ahead, and that's my opinion. I'm going to do a full video. I'm going to do a video, top 10 reasons why I joined the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. So I'll go much more into that in a future video. All righty. So, the Bushmills, I give it by 1 or 2 points, but both of them at that price range, I find it a challenge to recommend, plopping down that kind of coin for these. I know some people, they love the Bushmills 21. I'll be reviewing the 16-year-old. I got the 16-year-old, but for that much, I don't think so. Christopher Moy says he said he paid Jack the Pickle down. $200 sounds like a bargain. Yeah, I don't think so. There's so many bottles. I mentioned in my video, I can, for $55, I get the Redbreast 12-year-old. That's a pot still, not a single malt. But for $55, I can get the Redbreast 12-year-old. I'll take 3 to 4 of those over this or over this any day of the week. Any day of the week. There's a lot of other whiskeys up there, even just Irish whiskeys for under $100 that would be perfectly satisfying for that. The Powers Lane, the John's Lane, Powers John's Lane, $65 to $85. It's a sherry bomb, and it's a pot still whiskey. That's a phenomenal whiskey, an Irish whiskey that I would take over either one of these for less than half the amount of money. So, alrighty. So, by the way, my next few videos in transitioning in the study, we're going to be looking at Islay, and on the list is every distillery. So we'll be kicking it off with Ardbeg, then Laphroaig, and Lagavulin, and Bowmore. And I've got some special bottles I bought for Bowmore. I had to go find something extra special. Another 21-year-old. I'll be reviewing this Aston Martin Bowmore 21-year-old. This was over $300. This is not a cheap whiskey, but I want to do something special for this study. I'll be doing the Bruichladdich Island. What the hell is it called? Bruichladdich. I just was drinking it the other day. The Island malt, whatever. From eight plots of land on Islay. So the Islay barley. That's a great whiskey. Interesting whiskey. Great whiskey. I'll be reviewing that one. I'm going to do a video on what I think are the best 3 widely available Ardbeg bottles. I'll be doing my next video will be on that. And we'll go from there. Alrighty. Hope everyone enjoys the rest of their weekend. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. If anybody is watching this on the replay, if you have any comments or questions, leave them down below. And about 24 hours after this streams, I'm going to put links to videos right here to watch. So if you like the content, tune in and watch these videos right here. If you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up. And until next time, see you next weekend. Slán Dioba.